Welcome to Book Time with Ryan. I am Ryan, and today I will be talking about H.P. Lovecraft's At the Mountains of Madness, Deluxe Edition, adaptation and artwork by Gou Tanabe. There, see? It's everything I just told you is true. This is a Dark Horse comic, graphic novel, sorry. It's in the format of manga, which was really confusing for me because I've never done that. Now this kind of worked out perfectly. My last book was centered around the Antarctic continent, Antarctic Sea, South Sea, and the villains were Japanese. Sorry, not all Japanese whalers specifically. This is a book that takes place, a story that takes place in Antarctica. And the adaptation and illustrations are done by a Japanese guy. I don't know how to say his first name. Is it Gou? Gou Tanabe? I know Tanabe. That's easy enough. I have to say, I don't read manga. So the big battle for me was understanding what order to read this in. I know it goes, from a Western English reader, it feels like it goes in reverse. What would usually be the back is the front, and then you read from right to left. But I didn't know how that worked with comics. Fortunately, this book has this little direction in it. This is, if you're reading in the regular English left to right, this is on the first page. Turn around while you still can. It tells you what order to read the dialogue boxes and the panels. That's awesome. Unfortunately, I didn't see that until I finished it. Had I seen that first, it would have helped me with the first probably 5 pages. Because eventually I realized that things made sense a certain direction. It just took me a while to get there. So, the art in this is generally black and white. I have issues with that, not the principle of it, but that sometimes I just can't figure out what's going on in the pictures detail. But I enjoyed this. It was different. It was actually, there were moments where I was really not stressed out, but it was a little tense. And I can tell you that when I was reading this, at least for the first half of the book, I kind of pictured The Thing, John Carpenter's The Thing, which I love. And I thought that's what was happening, but it wasn't. So I'm going to tell you what happens in this. This is set in the, I think, 1930s. There's already been a lot of exploration, but not as much as you would expect that late in time. And this follows a group of academics who are traveling to the Antarctic Circle, to Antarctica. But I keep saying the Antarctic. Antarctica. That's what it's also called. They're traveling to Antarctica and they want to explore and discover certain areas. And there's a couple different groups. Well, there's one big group. There's a geologist. There's a biologist. There's something else. There's a lot of different specialties. And some of them, they're boring down and they take some samples and they find this strange pattern that looks like it's fossil, but it's found in a layer that shouldn't have that kind of complex fossilized life found in it. And that leads some of them, Professor Lake specifically, to keep going to find out why this is happening. And he finds these giant black mountains that are previously unknown and uncharted in Antarctica. I can't say Antarctica. And they're in radio contact with the base camp, which has most of the other people. And then they lose contact. And there's storms, too. There are storms, which is kind of a recurring theme in Antarctica. Lots of storms. So the other team has to go. Basically, the rest of the people have to go and figure out what happened to this team. And when they get there, they find dead bodies. They're dead. The camp is destroyed, and they thought, well, maybe it was a storm, but then they're realizing that the destruction is too calculated and specific to just be general wind and possible wildlife. Like it's just too big and it's too directed. They start also searching for this undiscovered area. These are huge discoveries, would change science and history. And eventually they find the mountain chain too. And two of them, go up into the mountain chain looking for this one member. I think his name's Dabney, who was missing from Lake's. Everyone's dead from Lake's group except for one person. And they had already reported they had found some kind of life forms that were partially destroyed. They were intact, like they weren't fossilized, but they were millions of years old, and they were highly advanced compared to what should have been alive in the time period that they represented. So they believe they might have come from another planet, in space. Eventually they find these like hieroglyphics, and it's a story of the people, which they thought were these star animal things that can walk but also live in the water and have wings and have these star kind of heads and stuff. They look creepy, and they're savages. But as they're reading the history, they realize that they settled Earth and they created a number of different animals, and a lot of what we think of as life on Earth was dictated by this group of weird looking star animal things. They kind of felt like plants and animals. They had both characteristics. And there's this entire story about a number of different kind of wars that these people dealt with and affected where they could survive and where they went. And eventually it drove them to Antarctica, where they've kind of been frozen. And they also had this battle with another group of like amoeba kind of looking things that they created to help them work, but they rebelled. And in the end, it's those amoeba things that start attacking. Those are the ones that kill the people. And as they escaped, they were thinking back to what they experienced, and they were like, we thought of them as savages and animals and basic things, but they're far more advanced than we are. They've been frozen, but they're way ahead of where we were, and they're just man. They're just not human, but they're man, and they're reflecting on their history, and they've gone through battles, and they're trying to defend themselves, and they have their enemies, and these amoeba things are the enemies that are going after now these humans. So they leave and they decide, you know what, we're just going to say that we didn't discover anything. And how many times has this happened? They don't know. This could have, other explorers may have run into it too, and they just also decided that this wasn't something that they wanted to expose the world to, and they left. That's the book. There is no, well, I guess there are aggressive aliens, although I think they were probably created here. But it was not a thing. There was not a thing theme to it, which was a little different. It wasn't that scary. I don't know if this would count as like horror now. I think so, but it definitely doesn't come off quite as horish as do people use horish for H-O-O-R? H-O-R-R-O-R? H-O-R-R-O-R. Horror. I might have so much trouble with that. So I liked it. I thought it was kind of cool to see it as illustrated by Gou Tanabe. That's my first experience with H.P. Lovecraft. And I had never heard of At the Mountains of Madness before, but I enjoyed it. So good job, Dark Horse Comics, for doing something like this. It's cool. It's a very cool book. I mean, and there is a little bit of color in it. Oh, it also, it has the sprayed edges. Is that right? It also has one of those ribbon bookmarks, which is really helpful. I always appreciate ribbon bookmarks that are built into the book. There's a little bit of color in this somewhere. I guess I can show you what the alien things look like. Those things. There's one right there. So, I think really the most exciting stuff is right in the middle of the book where it talks about what these things were and their history. Otherwise, it's a lot of lead up on the mystery of where the group went and what they're finding and stuff. But it was fun. I liked it. So thanks for being here today. I'll talk to you later. Have a good one.